How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys Alex and Ryan. Today we're discussing another lefty bullpen arm because this team has such a right-handed heavy bullpen unit right now. Wandy Peralta representing our only lefty, of course, Zach Britton, Aroldis Chapman, both leaving free agency. And now we don't really have that diversity in the bullpen that we may prefer. A lot of righties there, so maybe the Yankees want to bring in somebody with some veteran experience. And Ryan concocted an interesting, segment for today regarding Matt Moore, a veteran, 33 years old, featuring with the Texas Rangers last year, spent time with the Phillies, the Tigers, the Giants, the Rays. He's been all over the place, and, he's had a couple of really good seasons, and now it seems to be like he used to be a starting pitcher. Now he's kind of regressed into a bullpen role, pitched almost 200 innings back in 2016, but now it seems like, primarily a bullpen type of guy that can help this team significantly. Maybe if you need a spot starter, Matt Moore can definitely fit the bill. But Ryan, tell me a little bit about Matt Moore, what he offers this team, and how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing great. And when we're looking at Matt Moore here, we're looking at someone who I think could end up being a guy whose market fell a lot shorter than he thought it would fall. Quite frankly, this all comes down to the Yankees' ability to move one of their infielders and, open up some cap space. The Yankees, again, aren't going to be, or not cap space, luxury tax space, but the Yankees are not going to be exceeding that Steve Cohen luxury tax. So there are a couple of factors at play here. Number one, does Matt Moore's market fall? I think it kind of has at this point. He hasn't signed yet. We're in February. I think he'd like to sign before pitchers and catchers report. So I imagine he could sign at any point. When we're looking at a guy like Matt Moore, last year, 1.95 ERA, the 2.98 FIP, he had issues with his command, 12.5% walk rate. But there are a couple of good signs of progression in terms of command. I've talked about this on the show before. But in terms of when we're talking about command and velocity, one of the first things to come back when you come back from injury, and Matt Moore came back from a couple of injuries last year and not really being completely built up, it's command. That comes back later, right? Fastball velocity, that usually comes back first. And that sounds a little shocking to hear. What do you mean velocity comes back first after injury? Shouldn't it be the other way around? But guys typically get to their, where they're going to be sitting at in terms of velocity pretty early on into the return process, whereas their command typically is the thing that struggles heavily as they recover. And Matt Moore really struggled with his command to start the year. He settled down command. He still had a not great walk rate after the month of May, but if we're looking at his walk rate after the month of May versus before, in terms of just walk percentage, it was still around 10%, but beforehand we're talking 16%, really high numbers, like kind of so bad that you can't throw that pitcher out there numbers. Last year 15.7% from April to May, 10.9% after. The strikeout to walk rate was better after May. The ERA was good all year. It's not like he had an ERA issue at any point during the year, but his ERA was also significantly better as he stopped walking so many batters. If you look at his pitch mix, he's a guy who throws a high fastball. He has 18.1 inches of induced vertical break. Now, for everyone at home not knowing what induced vertical break is, that measures how much vertical movement we're getting here. So more induced vertical break. You think of fastballs like Garrett Cole's or Carlos Rodon's, right, where they play well up in the strike zone. They have that rising effect to them. And then, if you think of a lower induced vertical break, that'll be talking about sinkers. So we have like 5 or 6 inches of induced vertical break. That's a sinking fastball. Think more Clay Holmes, Jonathan Loaizaga, Wandy Peralta. And he's, Matt Moore's also got, things like a knuckle curveball. It gets a decent amount of drop. It's got negative 10.9 inches of induced vertical break. So there's almost 30 inches of vertical separation between the four-seam fastball and the changeup. There are roughly 10 inches of separation vertically between the four-seam fastball and the changeup. And overall, there are 3+ pitches. And they all do a really good job at getting swings and misses. And quite frankly, we're talking about a simple pitch mix like that, where it's, just playing with vertical deception. That should play well for getting strikeouts. That should get a lot more fly balls. And while you might think to yourself, a fly ball pitcher in Yankee Stadium doesn't sound great, when they're left-handed, we're talking about a left-handed, pitcher in Yankee Stadium, you'll see better success typically. And especially with no shift, you don't have to worry about him being a guy who, could give up more batted balls in play and suffer because of no shift next year, or a limited shift next year. So overall, I think he projects pretty well for next year, and his stuff is still really good.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back at 2021 with the Phillies, 6.29 ERA obviously was a down season, 7.77 strikeouts per nine, 66% left on base rate, 39% ground ball rate, over 73 innings. So a pretty substantial sample size, and the numbers were not altogether that great, but fast forward 2022, the guy was absolutely electric. He was one of the best bullpen arms in the game. 1.95 ERA, 10.09 strikeouts per nine, barely gave up any home runs, 0.36 home runs per nine with a 4.2% home run fly ball ratio and a 44% ground ball rate with an 81.1% left on base rate over 74 innings. This guy really, came on, and, he started 13 games in 2021, made 24 appearances. So they were kind of utilizing him as like a half, bullpen, half starter. He didn't start a single game last year. He was predominantly only a bullpen arm. And as a lefty, this is a really intriguing type of player. Now, 33 years old, obviously is a little bit on the older side, but what do you think his market is right now? As you said, he kind of waited, things kind of deteriorated in terms of what he was asking. What do you think the Yankees would have to pay to get him right now?
Yeah, so, I know that reports came out that he was looking for like around $9 million right now. If his market falls a little bit, and, at this point, it just kind of has fallen significantly, if you can get him at $4 or $5 million, even after moving IKF, you can say, well, what about the Yankees left field situation? If the Yankees aren't able to acquire a left fielder and they still move IKF, right, do you just do nothing with the money? I feel like that would kind of be a waste. You moved IKF just to save money. Like, I really wouldn't be completely on board with that. Go out and get, bolster up your bullpen. Make something that you feel is quote unquote weak a lot stronger, right? That opens up a bench spot. You want to put Rafael Ortega there, and again, just platoon him and Hicks and pray you get a 100 WRC plus out of it. You just need league average, right? We just need league average out of left field for now. We've talked about this a lot. You're surviving until the deadline at that position. And Matt Moore, if you throw him in that bullpen, man, this is a guy, I know that his FIP was higher than his ERA, and his peripherals are higher than his ERA, but if you get anything close to a 1.83 ERA next year out of Matt Moore, even a sub-3 ERA, throw him in that bullpen. We're talking about, a bullpen that is going to be absolutely unstoppable next year. Quite frankly, I couldn't imagine a better fit for the Yankees as a reliever. He can throw multiple innings. As you mentioned, the year prior to 2022, he was a starter with the Phillies. He's a starter for most of his career. So this is a guy who can give you, 2 innings if need be. You think about those extra inning situations, the 10th, where they have the runner on second. Could you imagine, what? Let's just throw Matt Moore out there, who handles right-handed pitching well, right-handed hitting extremely well too. It's not like he's bad against righties. He actually performs a little better against righties, and that makes sense. It's a vertical profile, so vertical deception plays better against opposite-handed hitting than it does against your same-handed hitting. It's not like he performs poorly against lefties. 282 WOBA allowed. They hit 243 off of him. They're not hitting him either. They cannot slug off of him either. 324 slugging for lefties. He's gonna do really well in Yankee Stadium. He is a strikeout machine against left-handed and right-handed pitching hitting. So again, I think you could agree with me here. Just the prospect, the idea of Matt Moore in this bullpen, it would make this bullpen so much better. It would make this pitching staff so much deeper. It would make this team just that much better, right? At that point, it's like getting a better version of Lucas Litke, right? And this is no disrespect to Lucas Litke, but if you're saying, hey, we're going to take Lucas Litke and make him better, 1 and 2, you could throw him in high leverage. This bullpen, I mean, they're going to be the best in baseball with Matt Moore, and I don't really think that's a debate.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt Moore is kind of this, interesting player that you could use him as a spot starter. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I like about him the most is like, you have Herman, you have Clark Schmidt. Maybe Herman has some value right now and you can actually trade him. And maybe, I don't know, you can go get some prospects or whatever it might be for Herman. He's a good number 5. He's probably a starter in the rotation and multiple other rotations around the league. But when it comes to Matt Moore, he's got the longevity and proven durability that he can be a spot starter if you need him to do that. Again, lefty, so he's got some diversity as a primary bullpen piece, was fantastic last season, as you said. So, this is definitely a player that I think the Yankees should look at. The problem right now, and, this is the same thing they're running into with Jurickson Profar, they have no money to spend, right? So like right now they're at $287 million and the next luxury tax threshold's at 293. So they'd really only have about $5-6 million to spend. And even then they want to have a little bit of cash just in case an injury happens. They have to trade for somebody and consume a contract or sign somebody to smooth over anything. Unless they manage to trade IKF or Donaldson or Hicks, we're kind of cash strapped right now. We don't have much money to play with because they don't want to push beyond that luxury tax threshold, that Steve Cohen threshold. So right now, if the Yankees are going to make any moves for a player like Matt Moore, for a player like Jurickson Profar, they're going to have to offload one of those contracts. And for the time being, I don't see that happening until we figure out what happens in the infield. What we see, what happens with the shortstop position. That's going to be a very big determining factor about, our salary situation and, where we are in terms of allocations and how close we are to that threshold and if we have a little bit of leeway to spend elsewhere. So, take a look at in spring training. We're going to be doing a lot of work looking at the shortstops, looking at left field, who's kind of on the brink, who could be traded, who could be moved, how much money could be saved. We've discussed this extensively this offseason, but IKF right now seems like he could end up being the odd man out because I don't think that Cashman has a way to get rid of Donaldson. The baggage and the money is just too much for another team to even want. Hicks, coming off a couple bad seasons, we don't have much depth in left field right now. We don't have much depth, behind center field. Judge wants to play center field, but, they obviously have Harrison Bader there. How many games can he play? You need guys to supplement those reps. Hicks, unfortunately, aside from Oswaldo Cabrera, is kind of that guy that would feature in the outfield as a depth piece if that would be like a best case because that means somebody else won the starting job and looked really good. So right now, it's all about getting some money off the books to afford guys like Matt Moore, to afford guys like Jurickson Profar. So unless that happens soon, nothing's really going to go down in terms of trades or acquisition. So those things could end up happening though in the upcoming future. So we'll definitely keep you guys updated on that. As always, my friends, make sure to enjoy the rest of your day, like and subscribe as always, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.